the mechanics of vibration voice, poly voices, and well, we already went over the lasting effects, is that we just don't know. So vibration based, it's interesting. On your website, what do you want on you? On your website, you have a lot of videos of different techniques. And you might even have vibration bass, if I recall, yeah?
I think we do. And we have 5 beatboxers in our MRI database. Only one of them's up there, and if that one doesn't have vibration bass, then one of the others does.
Do you are you restricted in like when you can post that stuff, or is it just because it's a website and you're busy?
More of the latter. There's a lot more analysis to do on the other videos before I can feel comfortable sharing them with others.
So what goes into that? What goes into that analysis?
Well, so my specialty, sort of, is being able to look at what's happening inside the voice using one of these MRI videos or something else, and describing, using my knowledge as a phonetician, someone who understands how movements work to make speech, usually in the throat, though some people also study signs. My expertise is knowing, when the lips come together like this, that creates this kind of effect. But when they come together like this, it's a different thing. So you can have a bilabial sound like you find in a kick drum, or a labiodental sound like you find in a PF snare. And so part of what I do is just know the words that go along with different closures that happen in the mouth. And I can look at a video and, with a lot of time and care and going frame by frame, try to figure out exactly what is happening for each sound that's being made.
Yeah. And one of the things I respected, I brought this up in the email, there's been a lot of contention about the epiglottis and I mean, from my point of view, coming from not beatboxing, it tends to be like dogma, like this is how that sound is made. And what I found really interesting is that in your response is like, we don't know. And I found that really refreshing, right? Because I think people misunderstand, like, what makes scientists great is they admit very readily that they don't know, because if they get challenged, it doesn't do well. So,
and it's helpful not to know, because you don't have any preconceptions then about what things should look like. You're not looking for something in particular and getting disappointed when you don't.
When you're looking at MRI footage, what gives you that, like, aha, that is what is happening? What is the criteria for that, or the discovery process?
It's a lot of back and forth. So in the early days, I was working of this project, I was working with that beatboxer who initiated the whole acquisition of these videos, and she and I would sit and talk for hours about what was going on in each video, and say, well, we can see the larynx moving here, so maybe it's this quality of sound, or we can see the lips coming together. How are they releasing? It takes a lot, and there really isn't an aha moment. In fact, as I was writing my dissertation, I was in the final days of it and realizing that 2 sounds that I had categorized as like separate sounds on their own, or as sounds that work in a particular way, are actually like follow-ups to another sound. They always co-occur together. I think there was a PH snare involved or something. And just saying, you know what, this is actually very much related to some other sound means I shouldn't talk about these sounds as if they're separate. I should talk about them together. And that can also change what we describe the articulation as. This sound, I thought it was 2 separate things, but it's actually one combined thing, and the breath goes like this.
Interesting. So you're trying to make the explanations more concise and elegant.
Yes, but also accurate. Trying to describe exactly what's going on as best we can using the limited data that we have.
It's funny you say that, because I'm always looking at, when I do voice reviews or when I teach voice, I have to answer, like, what is head voice? What is chest voice? And I'm like, how much time you got? Like, because, like, we got options here. And so I see that a lot. is like what's chest bass, what's vibration bass, you know, what's throat bass and inward bass, all of these things. And YouTube comments are always really civil. But it's interesting what of the basses, the bass sounds, where do you find there to be like the common ground between them? Because you're talking about sounds that are similar, getting different names.
Sure.
And I think most folks seem to have interest, at least right now, around bass sounds.
Those are the ones that are the hardest to look at using the type of data that we have. So the stuff that I use is these MRI videos where it's like a sideways view of the head. And the resolution that we get in the larynx and around the larynx, where all the magic of throat basses and related are happening, isn't very clear. But it all seems to me, based on what I hear about it, to be related kind of to the heavy metal types of singing you were talking about before.
Yeah.
There's in all of them something that's not just the vocal folds coming together. There's false vocal fold vibration or aryepiglottal fold vibration, and it may vary from beatboxer to beatboxer. People may call them different things, and I know even for common sounds, some beatboxers make the same like kick drum with actually different articulations in the mouth, but they're both still kick drums. So you can. It's not clear that there's any one thing that necessarily defines any sound, at least at the moment. We need more data. But for all those basses, something extra happening in the region of the larynx is very important.
Now, the low resolution from the MRIs, is that just part of the territory, or is that like a funding thing with the university?
It's not a funding thing. I'm not an expert.
Sorry, putting you on the spot with
no, it's okay. So we collected these videos as part of a much bigger grant for looking at how the voice works, usually in speech. The lab I'm with just earlier this year, late last year, released a 75 speaker corpus of people saying a whole bunch of sentences, and it's free to download and anybody can look at it and see how the stuff works. It's very cool. So part of it is that we only looked at a few beatboxers and didn't try to zoom in on anything. There is some technology to narrow the field of view and get a better spatial resolution. But also, the whole technology of MRI in particular is really still developing. 3D MRI, where you can look, it'll be very important to be able to see the larynx in 3 dimensions, to see how everything's moving in the center, on the side, the top, the bottom. And that kind of work is, I believe, still just really getting to the point where it's becoming useful.
How do you coordinate that, right? Because I imagine if it were up to you, you have a line of beatboxers, like 3 MRI machines, someone who knows how to work OBS, like, so what's the bottleneck there? I imagine, what's the bottleneck?
Well, in terms of the 3D imaging, I have to be careful not to speculate here, because I'm not an engineer who knows how to do any of these things. I know it's expensive. Having an MRI, running an MRI is expensive, and there is grant funding for it. You need people who are interested in doing this kind of work, and you need people who are technically skilled enough to be able to run the machine and find the right spaces and get the right data. You need connections to beatboxers or beatboxers coming to you, and the timing has to be right as well. You need to make sure that, like if you only have one MRI machine at your place, and there are a bunch of universities now that are using MRI machines to look at the inside of the vocal tract as it does stuff. And if you only have the one machine and you are pretty good at getting it to do 1 or 2 different kinds of views, it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to try to set up the rig so that it's going to capture something different.
That I didn't think about. I didn't think about that. That's a physical hardware kind of engineer.
I think the engineering has a big part to do with it. Now, I am not an engineer. That's just sort of my understanding. I look forward to receiving emails from my lab saying, "Hey, actually, we've gotten really good at this. You should talk about the cool stuff we've done recently." Because there's always new stuff happening.